Hello everyone, how you doing? And welcome back to Skye and Evan in the morning. And today we're here to talk about Don't Worry Darling, the Olivia Wilde, what was it, 2021, 2020, 2019?
22.
22? Really?
Yeah.
Man, time during COVID. I have not kept track of it.
Well, and the movie itself was kind of forgotten the
Yeah,
time, this one got overlooked, so
yeah. And yeah, a movie that I think is alright. And Evan, you said it was interesting, which is a word I love when you say something is interesting. So why is it interesting, Evan?
uh it's- I'll start honestly, like the companion comparisons are like the best place to start because that was what you were saying is you
Well, yeah,
thought
it's the
this was
reason
like
I recommended the movie because we just watched Companion, and I was like, well, this reminds me so much of Don't Worry, Darling, which you can understand
yeah,
why.
exactly. Like part of this is meant to be a commentary on relationships and how family dynamics work like in relation to like how much you work versus like how much you stand at home and all that stuff. It's apparent what they're trying to do. What I like about Companion is they show their hand in the first act.
Uh-huh.
Like it's maybe like 20 minutes of film where like other because and this is the thing about the trailer to that movie because
It
I'm like I don't like the second
spoils.
trailer. It spoils. Yeah, it shows a lot of the details, but even still I don't think it ruined. I mean, I watched that second trailer and it didn't ruin the movie.
Uh-huh.
It was still like an enjoyable
Oh yeah.
experience. This movie, it's like they want to keep it all a secret. It's all like, whoa, what is this? Like, what? Like, what? All this crazy, wild stuff is happening. What does any of it mean? And it's like, they just keep you on a string until like the last like 25 minutes, basically. And you're just like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I think this movie should have been a lot shorter. Uh, I think I was thinking just watching. I was like, this could be 90 minutes long. It's I don't know.
For sure.
It's there's a pattern I've noticed, and I don't know if it's like an actual pattern or I'm just like weird for thinking it is. But in my mind, I always like see movies like this, movies that are like trying to have like some social commentary and be like the super deep insight into whatever. Um, they are always like 2 hours long instead of 90 minutes long because they're like I feel like the filmmaker feels like no, 90 minutes long is for like cheesy horror movies and silly comedies. This is a serious movie. And so I
Well,
just kept thinking about this movie like it doesn't need to be as long as it is. And
no, filmmakers, yeah, I feel like they forget that sometimes that like you can have a movie that's 90 minutes. It doesn't have to be a low budget. Like the ones I always love to cite are Drive and Fargo. Those movies are 90 minutes long and
oh
like
yeah,
they're
Fargo is 90
exactly
minutes
as
long.
long.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're as long as they need to be. It's just
Yeah.
one of those things where like a movie doesn't need to like overstay its welcome. And some movies do like kind of push that 2 hour bar. And this is one of them.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I just find it unnecessary. It's the kind of thing, and there's a lot of like repetition as well. It kind of like tries really hard to drive the point home instead of being more subtle as well. Which was even something you said
yeah.
was funny
Well,
that literally the director writer explains the plot to the to the main character. Because
apparently, Olivia
Olivia,
Wilde actually didn't write this movie. It
oh
looks like she just directed it, which is interesting. I thought she was one of the writers, but
yeah,
no.
she guess she just directed it. Weird because
Still, it is kind of funny that she plays a role. And,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and she's good. I mean, as an actor anyway. I really like her as an actor. So
Yeah, I so part of the frustrations for me was like the lack of setting interesting things up. Like I was saying, so the twist the twist of this movie and I'm even a little confused with this having just watched it myself. So the entire place is fake.
yeah,
What I'm gathering is this is almost like a dream. It's like a simulation, right?
it's
Like
basically a
you're
VR world. Yeah,
okay. So that adds up enough, but it's like they could have done interesting things. Like again, another thing that was in my mind I was laughing about was Amazing Digital Circus. Little bit of that going on
uh huh.
with like the dream world and the characters trying to figure it out.
Well, yeah,
But
some of that they like hint at, but they never actually like fully develop it into a full blown concept. Like when
yeah,
she's crushed between the window and the wall. You're like,
Yeah,
oh, that's
that
cool. That's some like digital circus, like existential shit.
what
But
was going on there though? I was so confused. I
I
was
don't
like,
know.
"Wah!
I
Oh my
in when I
god!"
was watching it this time, my mind was like, are the people who run this place like punishing her for having gone out to the desert? Is that it? But then I thought that doesn't really make sense. Like, I don't think they would be punishing her without her like
No.
even knowing the reason, and they don't seem like the people who would like punish her like that. I don't know. It seemed weird. I think it
It
was
did
just
seem
like a way to like show like the seams of this world falling apart or something instead of being like
yeah.
anything that
Well,
actually
exactly.
meant something.
Well, and like the lights are exploding at the end, and that was exactly it. I was like, so is that like kind
Yeah, I
of
had
meant
no
to be
clue
an
why.
Inception thing where
Yeah.
like the dream's falling apart? It's like, oh my god, this
Yeah,
isn't
I had no
right. But
clue why the
like,
lights were exploding. When it started, I was like, "What?" Because like obviously I knew the entire thing about this movie. I This is the third time I've seen this movie. Um,
uh,
it's not even a movie I love that much. It's just yeah, I happened to watch it a few times. But I was just thinking like it makes no sense for the lights to be blown out. I think it's just like
well, that is my best guess. Like the dream or whatever is like slipping, and again, like you were
but it's
saying, with
like a
being pushed
virtual
against the
reality. It's
window.
not like it's like inside someone's mind. It's not like it's Inception, like you said. It's because if it was, it would make sense. If it was
Yeah,
like all for Florence Pugh, what's her name, Alice. If it was all for Alice, I get. But it was not. It was for a bunch of people. It's virtual reality world. So I think it doesn't really make a lot of
yeah,
sense to.
but for what? So Frank's wife just fucking kills him at the end for no reason. We barely know anything about her, and then she just annihilates him. And it's like, what? I think she says something like time for the women or something like that, or like it's like and she says like you stupid man or something, but it's like what was in that building? What were all of the men doing for work? They
They
like
were
what
doing
was their
regular
job?
they were doing
And
regular jobs in real life. The building doesn't exist. They get into the building, then they disconnect
so
from the virtual world, and they go do whatever job they need to pay for having the
so
system
they
at
just
their home.
they so they keep like their wives catatonic and like in a dream
Yeah.
fantasy and then pay to I don't see how that could work. Like this is another thing about Companion that I love is that Companion leans into its premise a ton. You're like come on, like you're like come on, this couldn't possibly happen. And they throw in that there's like a billion government regulations in there,
Yeah.
and then you have like the essentially like Companion like ambulance drivers that are talking about all like the sadistic things people fucking do. That like I'm sure like that type of thing exists in companies all the time where they're like something is a thing but you just are like don't use our product this way.
Uh-huh.
Like I those isms really help Companion, and in this movie they take everything pretty deadpan, so
Oh yeah,
like
this movie
there's
takes itself
not
very seriously.
yeah, there is not an attempt at making this like slightly comedic or
I
even
kind of
just
get
like
though, like it's because it's obviously it's not what the movie's going for, but it's weird because like obviously Companion it
well
still makes its point,
uh,
which is similar to the point this movie makes in terms of women and
yeah.
relationships. Uh, it like well without also taking itself too seriously, whereas this movie takes itself very
Well,
seriously.
the part that kind of broke me was the car chase. Like I was literally saying it when she was like pinned between the two cars and that guy was like, "Stop her!" And I was like, "Oh, she's gonna do it. She's gonna slam on the
The
brake,
breaks,
and then
yeah.
it's gonna like it just happens." It the movie does what you kind of expect, and it's a tone thing. It's that they take it very, very seriously, even though it's got kind of a wild premise. And I just had a tough time like relating to the characters or even like getting because it's confusing how it works with Harry Lloyd's character and like
Harry
and their
Lloyd?
entire
No,
dynamic
Harry
because they
Styles, you mean?
or styles. Yeah, yeah. Sorry.
Harry Lloyd, very different character.
Mixed up the sexy Fritz. um it I don't know. It's just I found it a frustrating experience.
Uh huh.
That's the simplest way I can describe
Yeah, that's fair enough. I don't know. I think like as a feminist like piece of media. I think it makes its point quite well about. I mean, it's
Well,
even why it's set in the
man.
50s. That fake
Well,
world is obviously to be like the classic idea of like the American family,
well,
the woman staying at home and the man going to do their jobs.
and they all do their jobs at the exact same time. Like that was that early on. I was kind of getting into the movie, and that was the part that I was invested in when they show like the toast and the bacon and eggs being cooked exactly the same way, and
Yeah.
they go to work. It's like like I
I think the
it's like
thing
I get
is with
it,
this
movie.
movie, I think the first act and the third act are pretty. I mean, I think the first act is really good. Third act is all right. Second act really drags, and I think that's part of the issue with this movie. Because like, there's a lot
Well,
of interesting stuff in both acts, but the middle part of the movie is like a lot of like just stuff that it does not need to to
because
happen.
honestly, it doesn't really go anywhere. It doesn't really do anything. Because again, you're just kind of waiting until she figures it out, right?
Uh-huh.
Like eventually, she has to know what's
Well, and
going on
there's
and do something
that's
about
part of
it.
the
But
frustrating part and why I think this movie should have been shorter. Because when she does figure most of it out, they do like the electroshock therapy, and she goes back to forgetting. So we have like another 10 minutes of her not knowing anything, and then when she finally confronts Harry Styles, then it breaks the glass on his head. Then it's when finally like, okay, now the third act can begin. But there's like a good like 20 minute
yeah,
uh portion of the
because
movie that's just like it's unnecessarily rehashing stuff.
yeah, it's a pretty clear end of the first act. Like the movie opens and then it ends when she goes to the place with the windows. And then from there, you basically have a reset to the second act, and then the third act's probably like initiated when she kills her husband. But yeah, that second act is rough. She does because they have all those like dreams and like the black and white dancers. It's like, whoa, what
Yeah.
does that mean? But then and they also dance themselves.
Yeah. I think it's
Everything
just
to do
like
with her friend
I-
dying is the thing that I find frustrating about the second act, because
uh
it's so hard to understand what that was.
you mean Margaret killing herself and
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
slicing.
On the
Well, yeah, I guess she figured out she was inside a simulation and then tried to kill herself to get out of it. And then that meant that they discontinued her. I assume they just like didn't let the guy continue his job. Uh they continue like using the software, but it might just be that they killed them because like they say in the third act like they're gonna come and kill you in the real world when Florence Pugh is running away, which is something. So I
yeah.
don't know.
And this place too, because again, I'm just going through the movie. Like, what is the point of all of it? Because like I was saying, Frank is clearly meant to be like kind of a mud. I associated him almost more with Jack Quaid's character instead of companion,
Oh
but
yeah,
they
he's Jack Quaid, but
they
like he's like the leader of these people. I mean, you said
yeah.
Alex Jones, probably better like Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate is the perfect
Oh,
example.
almost honestly,
Like the way he
but
talks about women is like no equality shouldn't exist. Like obviously he doesn't say literally that verbatim for the audience,
yeah, but
but he does like say that stuff during the like the mind
the
control things.
videos and all
Yeah,
it's very like submit to authority kind of a thing,
yeah,
which
very.
and
And I
I
guess it's the point the movie's making about the way women are treated by men still and how they want this like traditional idea of a family that doesn't respect the women's like autonomy and their
independence and
yeah
yeah.
exactly like which is I think it's done pretty well like it consistently works within the movie. I think it's just I don't know, it's a weird movie because I
Well,
like it and I
it's
like the ideas it's exploring, but it's not like it does anything like too extraordinary with anything with that.
well, what I would say about that is this is an example of a movie where like theme is almost more prominent than it's a little bit like Interstellar, where it's just theme is at the forefront of the
Uh-huh.
story rather than even the story itself. And
Yeah.
I do want to give credit to them for that, because there is some interesting stuff here thematically and in terms
Yeah.
of how relationships work. But again, like all the questions just kill me. So like again, what is the deal with Frank? Like what does he gain? I guess money?
Money, yeah. I mean, he sells the software for these people, yeah.
The other people, like, what do they get out of it as well? Like, I guess, like, simulation and dreams and whatnot.
Well,
But I'm
the
like,
men get like a
there's got to
loving
be,
woman who I guess just like does everything for them and makes them happy.
yeah. But
Because that's what they want. They want a
how do you,
relationship without actually having a woman who has her own autonomy, which works pretty well.
yeah, which and I get that, but again with those questions of like you in essence almost kill them, right? Like you're
Basically, yeah.
trapping them. Like what do they like? They have families and friends, right? Like
Well, yeah,
what's
that's
how does
again
all
the
that go
kind of
down?
thing where
It's
you're
like
kind of like you shouldn't think about their family or friends or stuff like that. But I get
but
your point. Like, but yeah,
it's a little beyond like, yeah, it's a movie. I'm like,
I don't
come
know.
on,
I think I
this
can
is
look past it.
premise.
And like you said, it's more focused on like theme. I was like, okay, I get the point the movie's making. I don't know. I thought it was
Yeah.
fine, but I completely understand if you're a little upset by that because it is a little stupid, to say the least.
Yeah. Strange stuff how the plotting comes down. And
Uh-huh.
again, Companion in this are different movies, but I preferred the premise to Companion because I think they played again, tone is a big thing. Like they
Uh-huh.
played it better in terms of like the themes and in terms of like what the premise was to get the story going. In this
Yeah.
movie, they take it very seriously and it's hard to pinpoint down what like the point of some things are, especially in the second act, like you were saying. It's just
Yeah.
the second act is rough.
Yeah, the second act really drags. It's yeah. I think because they wanted to make like an interesting mystery in this movie, but like the mystery was so simple that they like just kind of came up with a bunch of
Yeah.
bullshit that doesn't really connect.
Well, this is another thing. I low-key have wanted to do a video about this, but there's a difference between mystery and intrigue. And
Uh-huh.
I will always gun for intrigue because like intrigue gets you curious. You're curious about things you want to know more, you're interested in knowing more. Mystery is when things are hard to figure out. Mystery is like usually tied to frustration, and like good mystery movies are ones where you're like drip fed interesting information, but then you have movies like this that are like premise based mysteries. It's like, wow, what is that? Like, this is so well. Like, the plane crash is the example of that because, like, the plane, and there's like a model plane being drug in her dreams, and it's like, what's that all about? And it's like,
Yeah, I genuinely
what is
don't
the
get the
kid like?
plane
Whoa.
thing really, because it's like the, there isn't a plane, right? Like it makes no sense for it to there to be a plane
I,
in the like simulation universe.
yeah, like I didn't look up anything like interpretations of it, but seriously, yeah, if it's like a simulation, what could that plane have been? Other than again, like we were saying with the wall, like a glitch, like just
Yeah,
but
but like, why would the
it's not.
glitch only be in her head and not like in the universe itself, the
And then why
VR
would
world?
she be dragging like the model plane in the desert? What does that connect to? Unless
Well,
that was like for her
that's
kids and
Margaret
she
that was
just
doing that. She was
yeah, yeah.
dragging
Well,
it while she was walking out with her son into the desert.
yeah. So a plane just happened to be doing that, or did she do that after that? This is
I
the
don't
thing though.
know.
All
I
these
don't know.
questions they don't have answers, and you just
Yeah.
like you
Well,
got to buy
we've all
into the
seen
premise or the
this kind of like premise. It's very classic premise, you know, with the like Plato's cave, basically, of like you seeing like a few glitches and
yeah.
everything, and then you realize that the world is not as it seems. You know, it's classically Matrix. You know, just Plato's cave, basically. But like, I feel like the movie like introduces these aspects as a like, ooh, there's something wrong with this universe, but it doesn't like answer why those things specifically happen, which is frustrating. Because like
Yeah.
it's like you said, like it's the
Well,
difference between mystery and intrigue. I mean, even said like intrigue is when like drip fed information. You're like, ooh, I'm picking up on something, and then you almost can figure out the mystery on your own, and that's what's cool. Um, because I was thinking like in if I hadn't seen the trailers for Companion, that first act is so good at drip feeding information. You're just like, huh,
oh yeah, just
that's
those
interesting.
little
Like there's a lot of things that you notice that obviously because I knew that she was a robot in that movie, I was like a little less interested because the movie kind of spoils it. but in the trailers. But I was all all the time I was like, oh, this is cool, this is cool. Like a bunch of like ways to figure out that she is a robot with like just casual dialogue. I was like, oh, that's cool. That's better than what this movie does. I think.
Well, and what's nice about that as well is I don't think it's all that clever, and I don't think it's meant to be. Like
Uh
when I
huh.
watched the movie, I was like, oh shit, I noticed the knife. I was like, he just slid something into her pocket. Like, what the fuck was that? But like it you get all that in the first act, and then it's all like it all makes sense once the reveal
Oh yeah.
happens. But they also don't, I don't think it's meant to be that like, you know, compelling or interesting, or like it's just supposed to be like something that you can pick up. This whole movie feels like it's waiting to reveal like
Yeah.
something, waiting to reveal like the secrets and
Yeah, from the first scene,
let
you kind of feel
everything
like,
known.
oh, there's a big mystery. Ooh, what is it? Um, and then and then like it just
Well,
doesn't answer a lot of the reasons why there's a mystery, like the fucking airplane and everything. It's weird.
well, and funnily enough, I was saying that Companion showed its hand. I think this movie does too, and it's when you see all the cars driving to the exact same place. It's like, oh, something's up. This is like this isn't normal. This isn't just a 50s movie, which I guess you're kind of supposed to know that through and through. And I
Yeah, I mean the movie does point to like, okay, that place is where some weird stuff happens, and like the big mystery is that ooh, what are they actually doing there? Because you think it's like, oh, it's a 50s movie, but there's something fishy going on in that universe, kind of like almost like Fallout or something. Um,
yeah.
but then when we realize like there's a twist, that, like the building is just like how you get out of the dream world and everything. So I don't know. I think
What I'm telling you,
it's
that's why they killed Frank. They couldn't kill Frank in the third act, and they just needed him to die. So they just have his fucking wife kill him, and that's it. Just
I still
and
think it
she
like it makes
escapes.
a good point to have Frank's wife kill him, like of the point they're
Yeah,
making
it's like,
about the relationships and
poetic.
the way men use women and everything. It's just again, it kind of comes out of nowhere, and it works all right, but it kind of does come out of nowhere,
Yeah, and she barely gets anything. She has like two scenes. It's
which is
funny that
annoying
same
because it's
actress
Gemma
plays
Chan.
Cersei.
I love Gemma
Yeah.
Chan. Whatever. This
Uh,
movie is actually stacked with the actors. It's kind of insane.
yeah, it's got a great cast. It's just I wish there was a little bit more done with
Yeah.
like the supporting crew.
Oh yeah. It's why I think like because if it was a 90-minute movie, it would have been like fine. But if it's a 2-hour movie, you kind of want more out of the characters, and the only supporting character that gets anything is Olivia Wilde's character.
Yeah, she's kind of it,
Yeah.
honestly. The rest don't.
And again, it's an interesting idea that they use for her, that she wants to be in this fake world because there she can have her kids, which I think is like an interesting
Yeah.
way to see how like someone could deal with that kind of trauma. I think that's cool. But like,
But
not
they
much
throw
is
it in
done
at the
with it.
last
Yeah, they
second. Like,
kind of
couldn't it have
just
been
say
done
it.
in the
Yeah, they kind of
yeah,
just
second
say
act?
it.
Like use
Yeah.
that and then lead into the third act and her leaving. But it's just
Yeah.
he's like, oh, I know this world's fake. By the way, it's like, oh, you do you? It's like, okay, I
Yeah.
I don't know. This is a weird movie. Did not quite vibe with it. I'm with you. Probably the biggest issue overall, like other than tone, is the runtime. It should have been shorter. There's
Oh
so
yeah.
much that could have been cut out, and apparently a bunch already was cut out. So I don't know. I interesting elements, interesting like the way the dreams are shot is interesting and looks good, and it's got some pretty good cinematography, but the story itself and the characters are a bit rough.
Yeah. It's again the kind of thing where I feel like there's a good movie in there, but it kind of needs like a few redrafts.
Yeah, I would
Which,
agree.
yeah, which is like I like the concepts. I like the general like theme that's being explored. And Olivia Wilde, obviously very outspoken feminist, so it makes sense for her to direct this kind of movie. But it just lacks like a little something to tie it together a little better. It's like you even said, like you made fun of the
Yeah.
ending. It was like, oh, that's it. That's where they cut to credits. It was kind of like, yeah, like she just comes back to the real world and they cut to credits. It's like, huh, okay, I guess that ended. Like it feels like it's lacking an ending in that ending. It's a little
Yeah, because
frustrating.
again, it's like just you'd think it would be even just something like her waking up or doing something, in the world for herself.
Well, the
Like
point
I
was like, oh, they're gonna come for you and kill you now. Whoa, in the real world. So like, oh, okay, she's gonna wake up. She's gonna need to do something, but then she doesn't. We don't see anything from when she wakes up. So whatever.
yeah, it's maybe they just wanted to keep it in the world, but I think it could have helped if she'd like woken up and there had been some resolution. You could even have her kill her husband in the real world.
Well,
Like
he's
you could
dead
have
already
that
anyway.
scene. Yeah, like you change it, of course,
Oh
but
yeah,
that that could have meant more. It
yeah.
could have mattered more after the fact rather than just in the actual movie.
Well, it's
So
weird because I'm thinking like there's not really any reason for the chase in the third act except that we need some conflict.
no,
Because when she figures out
and
the truth,
tension.
well, once she figures out the truth, she kind of just like she needs to leave the fake world, and it doesn't really make sense for like the people who work for like this virtual reality world company in the real world to like want to kill her in the real world. Like it seems like so over the top for like what the point of all this was.
Yeah,
So I feel it feels like it's just we need a car chase or something to make this movie like have a cool like upbeat ending, not upbeat but like you know tense ending I guess.
it's all it's also unclear kind of how that works because I feel like Companion, like honestly, the one thing with Companion that I found a little frustrating was how the voice works in terms of like Iris go to sleep. Like it there were some times, especially in the woods, it was like, come on, dude, you should be able to just shout this and like it turns them off. But other than that, they lay out the rules pretty well, and a lot of it adds up. In this movie, not so much. Like the how all of this comes to pass isn't really explained, and
Well, the
they
Iris
seemingly just
like
kind of want to hand wave it.
when they were in the woods in Companion, like she already turned off the voice command anyway.
No, I thought it could still be used on her.
No,
It couldn't
remember
be.
because there's one time where he does get close to her in the woods and he says Iris go to sleep and then she just runs away because she
I
already
thought I
turned
thought
off.
it, I thought it was she was too far. Like
No,
it
no,
needed to be
there was a
closer.
moment where they showed she was messing with the cell phone with her controls. She turned off voice
Ah,
command, so that was why it didn't work. She literally there's a button that
interesting.
press voice that shows voice commands. It was the little knob that was turned on. She turned it off, so that was why.
Inter- Interesting. I didn't realize that. I need to rewatch it. It's on digital now.
Yeah.
So-
Well, that's another
uh,
conversation about movies just going to digital way too fast after 2 weeks being in theaters. Christ.
God, it sucks too because Companion's good. And I keep recommending it, and I wish people watch it in theaters because it's a great theater
Genuinely think it could
movie.
make a bunch of money in theaters if it had kept going, but people just are
Yeah,
digital, whatever.
it's it's interesting. It's funny like getting because you were mentioning that like Companion is written and directed by a guy, and this
Yeah.
is like Olivia Wilde with a similar idea. I both are like explorations of like relationship dynamics, and they have interesting things to say. I just think like Companion makes for a better, more entertaining movie
More
because
entertaining,
again,
I think,
tone
is
and
like
run.
hard to argue with because it's just like a movie that takes itself so much less seriously and it's having a lot of fun with the concept. This movie isn't
Yeah,
having fun because it's trying to be very serious.
yeah, and maybe not to a great effect.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't know what tone would have better served because again, would it have been better to just lean into this fully, the 1950s aesthetic and how goofy and fake everything it like, I maybe it would have made for a better experience, but I'm just
Maybe.
one way or another, I feel like it's a bit of a ridiculous premise and leaning in might have helped them out a bit
Uh-huh.
because it definitely helped with Companions. So
Yeah, I think they don't even lean in hard enough into like the 50s atmosphere because there's a lot of points where I'm like, this doesn't even feel like the 50s, like the fucking party that they have, like the dancing and everything.
yeah,
It doesn't even
yeah.
look like the 50s. It would be cool if they, because like when you watch Fallout, that shit has like pure 50s vibes because obviously before the nuclear fallout, the well, it happened in the 50s. So it's like it's quite interesting to have all that leaned into it. It looks really cool, and it's a lot of fun that they can have with that. But there's not really much of that other than like you know, the way they dress and everything. Like maybe have
Well,
the movie
like
like be shot in a way that looks like the 50s, like we were saying with the Pistol, which is actually an episode
yeah,
that hasn't released yet as of this episode. So who knows? We'll talk about a TV show called Pistol at some point, whatever that's up. But the or like, you know, having like 4:3 with like a super grainy aesthetic or something like that to make it look more visually interesting that it's the 50s, which also would help like differentiate that from the real world. That because that would have been cool. Imagine you're watching this movie that's all like all 50s,
yeah.
and then you
Well,
just get a cut to like a, you know, 2.35 by 1 like digital shot of the real world. You're like, wait a minute,
well,
what's going on?
well, The Good Place also does that. It has different cinematography in like the real world versus The Good Place. So what I actually thought was happening in the third act, I was wondering about the song he was humming. And I was like, wait a minute, is that a song that doesn't exist in like the 50s that's like anachronistic? And I was like, and I just realized that I was like, oh man, you could have done other things like that. You could have had her remember things that were incongruent with like the time period that this is set in. Because again,
Yeah, that would have been
I don't
cool.
even know why this is the 50s, other than what we were
Well,
saying
yeah, it's
before,
the
the whole like
aesthetic of just like the
relationships
yeah,
and
the
going to
traditional
work
family.
and
Yeah.
yeah, it's so much more could have been done with that in terms of like how the movie was shot and like what the 50s aesthetic was done for. But like you were saying, it doesn't even feel like the 50s for the most part. So damn, I'm going rough on that. I really am, but this was not so much a vibe for me.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah, it's I
Um,
mean, I don't even love it myself. I just think it's not a bad movie because everyone was dragging on this movie, and I don't think it's nearly as bad as people were saying. I think it's fine. I think it's a good
yeah.
movie. But I completely understand you thinking it's just like not great because it has issues. So I don't know. I enjoyed watching this movie every time I watched it. So yeah.
I feel you. Well, I mean, kind of
Other
comes
than
down to that then is would you recommend it? Because I'm just
hmm,
that's what I'm wondering in my mind with this. It's like it didn't do so well at the box office and
yeah.
it's kind of been forgotten. I just get the feeling it's because like not many people talked about it, not many people like recommended it
Yeah,
or
I don't
like,
think a lot of people vibe with it.
yeah.
Yeah, I would
Some did
recommend
though. It
it.
gets decent reviews, so
Yeah, it's not all bad. I mean, yeah, I mean, it was like mostly dragged on Twitter, which is not really a great representation of like the general public. But yeah, I would recommend it myself. I think it is a pretty good movie. And I think it is an interesting. It's kind of like obviously Barbie. I think as well was a better movie than this, but it's like kind of like Barbie, where it's kind of like baby's first feminism, in a way, where it's like it's kind of interesting to watch, but it's not like it's doing anything too deep or, I mean, Barbie even has like deeper explorations of feminism than this, in a sense.
I mean low key it does.
Yeah, yeah. My issues with Barbie don't come with like the story itself, or more just it being a product of Mattel. And, you know, I made an entire video about that. Um, I don't know. I think it's all right. I think it's worth watching, if only for Florence Pugh. I think she's great.
Oh yeah, I don't even know if I've talked about her performance. She's
I was go-
solid as
yeah, I
she
was
always
about to
is.
ask about performances because, like, genuinely, Florence Pugh, she's great in everything I've seen her in. It's insane.
Yeah.
And there's Harry Styles, which I was curious what you thought of him.
Like I was a little mixed on him. He hasn't really done acting ever since like last couple of years. He just tried it for a tad and then kind of stopped and I don't know.
And it is
I've
obviously a
yet
movie directed by his like wife, so
exactly. I don't know. I found him all right, but I've yet to be wowed by like a performance or a scene
yeah.
with him as an actor. So
Yeah, I would agree with that. I was because like people were dragging him, saying he was awful, and I think he's fine in this movie. Like he's not. It's not like he
yeah,
blew
he's
me away, but like I think the scene where Florence Pugh's being taken away from the car and he's crying, saying "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, sorry." I think it's pretty all right acting. I don't know.
yeah. It's I don't know. Like I said, just wasn't too blown away. But again, also not like there are performances that are like distractingly bad and like low key can ruin the movie, and this is not one of them. So
Yeah, yeah. Well then, Well, the question is, do you recommend the movie? Because I said I do, and you were undecided. You need to
I
give an answer, Evan.
I would not recommend this. I appreciate your recommendation, Skye, but I would not. It, and it's so frustrating because it edges on that. There's interesting things in this movie, and I don't want to like burn it at the stake, but all in all, that's my thing. I'm just like companion dabbles in similar ideas, and I just think
Yeah,
it's an all around better film. So
yeah. So the
yeah.
bottom line today is go watch Companion.
Yeah, secondary recommendation for
Yes.
companion.
Go back to our last episode after you watch it. Then watch it in theaters, please. No digital, no pirating. Go
Yeah.
watch it in theaters. That's what we want. We want to support that
Support
movie.
it, please. The guy who directed Fred 3 or whatever he locked
Yes.
in.
The Fred the series and Fred 3 the movie. He directed this and it's fucking great somehow.
Yep.
All right. Well, then I guess that's it for today. Evan, what is your recommendation for next week?
Oh my, I barely even had time to consider. 1 second.
Okay.
Um Yeah, that would actually be an interesting one. You indicated to me that you have not seen any Shyamalan outside of Old. Like
I
Old
watched
was the
Old
only.
and Trap. Yeah.
Okay, so you're only familiar with this like super recent stuff then.
Yeah.
Interesting. I am going to recommend my favorite film from Shyamalan. I haven't seen all of them, but it's uh it's in my top 20 for sure. Unbreakable.
All right.
That is one that I am very curious. I'm wondering because Shyamalan's, even some of his earlier stuff gets criticized. So I'm wondering like how much you'll like that film.
Mm-hmm.
It's an
Well,
interesting
I like
experience though.
Trap. I mean, I think Old is one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my entire life. But Trap, I think, is actually a very fun movie. So who knows?
I honestly have been curious about Trap myself. I'd
Well,
heard people like.
it is on my list to recommend on this podcast at some point because I genuinely think you'll like it. I mean, it's the kind of movie where it does not take itself seriously at all, and that's part of why
Yeah,
it makes it so much fun.
I've heard the performance of the main character is like so good that he
Yeah.
like the serial killer isms are just so funny and entertaining. And
Yeah.
I don't know. The biggest thing I've heard is Shyamalan's like daughter or whatever, like getting kind of a nepo role, and I've heard she's not that good.
I mean,
I've
I
seen
think she's
clips.
fine. Like, I don't really mind her acting. Like,
I I don't know. Well, she's a singer too, like right? Like
yeah.
she
Well,
does her own music
she's
for
an
the
artist in
film.
the
Yeah,
movie. Yeah, she's a good singer. I'll say that. And the
yeah,
music in the movie is actually pretty good from her. So, yeah.
yeah. I I always like being in Shyamalan's corner to an effect. I am with people that like his films kind of fell off and he hasn't really bounced back. I just feel like he became the twist guy.
Yeah.
Like every film had to be some big twist, and it's like, oh my god,
Well, it's
what
kind
the
of what
hell
I
is
like about Trap is that like the twist, quote unquote, is like so small. It's not like an actual twist. It doesn't like, whoa, this changes everything. It's just like, okay, that's cool. It's just like it's so like, uh, but yeah,
not stand out, not show offy,
yeah,
and yeah.
exactly. Well, all right then. Shyamalan then, Unbreakable. That's a movie I wanted to watch for a long time. So curious.
Yeah.
Does that mean we're gonna need to watch Split then at some point? And then what's the name of Glass?
Oh my god, that would honestly be an interesting thing to cover. Is like all three. I have opinions on all of them, but it's an interesting little trilogy they got.
Hmm. All right. Well, then that's it then, folks. Thanks for watching. Go watch Companion in theaters, please, and thank you. And we'll catch you next time with Unbreakable. See ya.
Catch you next time.